well, we can just jump right into it.
Well, before we started, you were talking about a little bit about Damascus and life there, and that
Mhm.
the electricity is off. Are you running on a generator or just the daylight of the day?
Yeah, daylight, but I did actually manage to install two very big batteries and I don't understand it all, but an inverter, which at least keeps my laptop, my phone, and the fridge running
That's great.
24/7. So
Is that using like
after
solar?
about a year of it's no, it's using battery power, but it can be connected to solar if,
Got it.
for example, the electricity cuts completely,
Right. Okay.
which it does every now and then. I mean, it's intermittent, so we have 4 hours off at the moment, 2 hours on every day.
Okay.
So we get around 6 hours electricity total per day, and actually we're pretty good. The next suburb, they're lucky if they get an hour and a half a day. So just to give an indication. And here, the water tanks are stored on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no electricity, there's no pump to push the water up onto the tanks in the roof. So no electricity, if it really hits a critical cutout, means no water for most of the people here. And now the temperatures are not so bad, but 2 weeks ago we were hitting like 48 degrees. So,
and that's
this is all part and parcel of U.S. occupation, regime change, war, and sanctions. It's the whole parcel.
Wow.
I think Americans have a lot to learn. I think we can learn a lot from what's happening in your part of the world. I think it's about time.
I mean, this is something I mentioned also just before we came on, that, what's happening to us now with the whole COVID-19 project, or gaslighting project, as I call it,
yeah,
is we are having the hybrid war waged against us, that is, the multi-spectrum war that has been waged against countries like Syria and Iraq and Libya and Venezuela and Yemen for literally decades.
Mm-hmm.
So this entire multi-spectrum war, which results, how it results in food insecurity, electricity shortages, water shortages, economic crashes, effectively sanctions on people, but just branded in a different way. So people are not actually waking up to the fact that the way wars have been waged against, if you like, the global south, or, to use other imperialist terms, the undeveloped world, are those methods, and that strategy is now being turned against us very clearly for me.
Yeah, and that's something that we've been saying on our own as well, quite often,
right.
in most things that we do, and it's what I've been telling people, in the United States. Often our audience, has a certain lifestyle, and that lifestyle was built on the shoulders of people in the global south. And what's been taking place in all the countries that you mentioned, I liked how you put it, the multi-spectrum war. Yeah, that's I want to go into that in a little bit. But basically that, what's been happening to those countries, like, as you said, for decades, is now coming here. And it's being done a little differently. Like we were talking about noise and things in our neighborhood. And you mentioned, oh, well, it could be that, Israel might just launch a bombing campaign and, this time of day. But, for a while.
A bit early for them, to be fair.
A bit early. Okay. They wait till the night. Well, we were we were being bombed through professional fireworks last year for about a month straight, every single night.
Than that,
yeah.
I would say.
Wow.
Really high grade professional fireworks.
And it was just
right outside our door. Like you could smell the sulfur in our house.
Wow.
That's how close they were.
And they were all over the community, and this, we were finding out that this was going on all over the United States, and it was going on last year. And we felt like it was a means of like a bombing campaign that did not destroy property, right?
Right.
But it was certainly something that frayed nerves and caused, you know.
Yeah, there was a lot of anxiety that was developing in our neighborhood as a result of what I call these professional grade fireworks bombing campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, again, but you know, that's a tactic. If you look at what Israel does, even when it's not bombing Gaza, I mean, very much like Eva Bartlett, I spent quite a lot of time in Gaza, particularly during the 2012 bombing. But even when they're not running a bombing campaign or a lengthy mowing of the lawn, as they call it,
wow.
They will still fly jets at very high speeds, breaking the sonic boom, which creates like an explosion as if they've just bombed. And actually, it's interesting you say that about the fireworks, because I can't remember when exactly, but in the UK, in the Northeast, I think they started doing that. The RAF started doing that. They started running exercises where they were creating this kind of sonic boom, which literally does sound as if you've just been bombed.
Wow.
Right. And that I remember it being reported shortly into the whole COVID project. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for me, you know, all of this is about, it's about destroying agency of what I call the little people. Mm-hmm. You know, in Syria, the voices of the majority of the Syrian people that are against the regime change war have been completely disappeared. They've been censored, deplatformed, including, of course, journalists that are transmitting those voices. They've lost all agency in the West. They don't have a voice. They're not given a voice. The only voices that can be heard are those that are amplifying the narratives that serve UK and US coalition foreign policy agenda. And that's exactly what's happening with COVID. You know, doctors and scientists and epidemiologists and medical experts and analysts are being deplatformed, censored, sacked, silenced, mm-hmm. defunded. Yeah. You know, it's exactly the same tactics that we saw over Syria. It's no different. And maybe that's why those who really stood on the right side of the barricades on Syria saw this coming immediately, because the tactics were so similar.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
Right.
I agree. You mentioned the term multi-spectrum. Can we, for our audience, can you describe what that means?
Well, it basically means the deployment of tactics and strategies which are not necessarily military. So that will include political pressure. It will include economic pressure, which of course incorporates economic sanctions or economic terrorism, as I call it, because sanctions are never supposed to be unilateral. They are always supposed to only target specific individuals. But we know, by looking at the Yemen, by looking at Syria, by looking at Iraq, the starvation of 500,000 children that were described as worth it by Madeleine Albright, of course. And here, very much the same thing. 90% of Syrians are now below poverty level. Starvation, food insecurity, food shortage, electricity shortages, water shortages, fuel shortages. All of these are part of the multi-spectrum war. And effectively what it is are methods designed to bring pressure upon a population to coerce it into complying with the agendas of the US and the UK and the entire sort of imperialist, capitalist, corporate cabal. Because I think what we're also seeing now is that governments themselves are largely instruments of power. What we're now seeing coming to the surface is this transnational corporatocracy or oligarchy that is effectively controlling everything. Right. Nations, and we're starting to see the lack of divide between nations that we have traditionally presumed to be enemies. This is just my opinion. I don't know what you guys think about this, but I think Afghanistan is absolutely bringing it to the fore. You can see it very clearly.
Oh yeah. Well, this is certainly in line with what we often say and cover in our essays.
Right. I feel, I have a brother who serves, and, he's said things like, sometimes you can go into these other countries and you can't tell the difference if you're in like Afghanistan or Arkansas. That's how much empire has taken over. They're all driving, the same kind of cars. They have the same kind of fast food places. You know what I'm saying? And there's no culture. There's no culture maintained in these places.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also part of this multi-spectrum war, the intention, particularly when I look at Syria, but if you look across the Middle East, it's an intention to destroy civilization. It's an intention to destroy historical heritage sites and monuments. So it's a project to erase this entire civilization and to rebuild it, if you like, in the image of the imperialist cartel. Now, of course, I stretch that imperialist cartel to the oligarchy, to the parasite class, because that's effectively what it is. Presidents are not elected, they're chosen. I would say the same in the UK. Leadership is not elected, it's chosen. It's put in place to implement part of the roadmap during their tenure, right? For me, there's no difference between the parties in the US, the parties in the UK. We don't have, and we shouldn't be looking at left and right anymore.
No.
That's an old paradigm that really we should be dropping completely. It's them against us.
Right, exactly.
And people here get it. That's the big difference. We're, in a sense, these so-called undeveloped countries like Syria that have been the target of dozens of interventions and interferences by the CIA since the CIA was created. This isn't the first time that Syria has been targeted. Since 1942 onwards, Syria has been the target of assassinations of military high command, leaderships, coup d'etat, intervention through intelligence operations, etc., leading to now. So this isn't a new thing. So this country is very prepared for this. It's the people are, if you speak to the road sweeper, if you speak to the taxi driver, if you speak to the receptionist in the hotel, they all know exactly what's going on. Right. The difference in the West, we're way behind the curve.
Right.
We don't get it. So many of us just don't understand what is going on. We're still sleeping through this, sadly.
Well, we've been both insulated and propagandized to
our whole lives.
Yeah. And I would say
the insulation is part of the propaganda, by the way.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
To hear the full episode of this edition of Pullquote, join Rockfin or become a patron.